Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. So this is the second video of my Halloween series. I actually asked you to choose a topic that you wanted to see and you guys voted for 3 horror legends from Venezuela. So thank you so much to all who participated. The fact that you chose this topic means so much to me because sometimes I feel that my culture is dying. Many artists have left the country, and those who have stayed very often don't have the resources or the time to create. So being able to share a piece of my culture with you is very important to me and to my family and to my country. So thank you so much again for showing your interest. So I decided to split this video in 3 parts because it was going to be too long. And I didn't want to spend 3 hours recording. So I'm gonna try to share a different legend each week. Again, as I mentioned in my last video, I'm only going to do this for October to celebrate Halloween. Bear in mind that I love Halloween, but as a child I was never able to go trick-or-treating. And this is because in my country we don't celebrate Halloween. Some people celebrate El Día de los Muertos, which is November the 2nd, but the celebration is not as big as in Mexico. To us, May is the month where the dead cross the threshold and walk among the living. Okay, so I would like to give you some background information before I begin my story. So my family comes from a very small village located in the countryside. I spent a significant part of my childhood in this place. This place was so isolated that there were no paved roads. There was no cable TV, and even for the longest time, we didn't have a phone. If we wanted to watch TV, we could only watch the national channels, which were only 4 at that time, and we had to find a signal. It was as if we were in the 60s when it was the 90s. But me, my siblings, and my cousins were very happy in this place because there was lots of green areas. It was basically in the plains. There's lots of wildlife. And this was where my great-grandmother lived. She had chickens and other farm animals, although she lived in a house. She didn't live in a farm. So there was not much to do, but it was fun. Like, we always could find activities to entertain ourselves. One of these activities was that in the evenings we will sit outside the house in the porch and other people would join us, like neighbors, and they weren't necessarily kids. They were just people that knew my great-grandmother. And they will come around and my grandmother will join us. Sometimes my mother would join us and we will get together, and then the adults will tell horror story. But these horror stories were not invented to entertain us. People in this place genuinely believed in this stuff. I don't want you to think that every Venezuelan person is superstitious, because they're not. In fact, many people don't even believe in God. But there are still lots of religious people, especially we have lots of Catholics, Christians, and Spiritists. We adopted many African religions, like Santeria. But people from this little village where my family comes from are very superstitious. Folklore is very important to us. It is the soul of the people there. And this is actually how my interest for storytelling begins. I think that I wouldn't like reading and writing if I didn't have this background. This era in my life and these people really taught me the power of storytelling. With all of this, I mean to say that it is okay if you don't believe in the supernatural. I understand that every person is different and that each one of you have a different religion, or perhaps you don't believe in anything. That's okay. We all come from different backgrounds. That's fine. I'm not trying to convince you to believe in what I believe or to believe in what my people believe. I'm just here trying to share a piece of my culture with you and to entertain you. My intention with this video is just for us to have fun together and to kind of experience through YouTube what I experienced as a child with that group of people getting together and telling stories. So without further ado, let's begin. So the legend I'm going to tell you today is the legend of El Silbón, or the Whistler. And I'm going to start with his origin story. So El Silbón is a spectre who haunts the plains and savannas of Venezuela. Before becoming a demon or a ghost, he used to be a young man who killed his father and ate him. His grandfather found out and punished him by whipping him. Then he scrubbed his wounds with chili pepper and poured a bottle of rum over his body. Finally, the grandfather let his dogs loose and they chased him until he died. When the grandfather was doing this, he cursed his grandson by telling him that from now on he will have to carry the burden of what he had done for an eternity. The people who claim to have seen El Silbón describe him as a man who is so tall that when he sits, his legs surpass his head. They say that he drags a sack filled with his father's bones and that he whistles to announce himself. People say that when you hear him close, it means that he's far away, and that when you hear his whistle faint and low, he's actually very close. So you should only be afraid if you hear his whistle from afar. Now, the most famous encounter with El Silbón has actually become part of the legend. It happened to a man called Juan Hilario, and this man was actually your Venezuelan countryside version of the dandy. It was the beginning of May and it was very late and he wanted to go to a party. We call these parties in my country parranda. So this man wanted to go to this parranda. He wanted to carouse, drink and dance with the ladies. But as he was on his way to this parranda, a man warned him and told him that El Silbón was haunting these lonely roads and that it was better if he turned around and went back to his house. But Juan Hilario said that he didn't believe in any of this stuff, that it was only superstition and that he was going to have fun. So he continued his journey and the night fell. And when it was very dark, he heard a whistle. At first, the whistle was very loud, but then the sound began to recede. And when the sound became almost imperceptible, an invisible force attacked him. El Silbón hit him until people from a nearby farm heard the noises and went to Juan Hilario's rescue. They found him incapacitated on the floor, but he was still alive and able to tell his story. Now, I have two personal experiences with this legend. The first one came from my great-grandfather. Again, he used to live in this very same house that we used to visit when we were children. But in his time, when he was young, this place didn't even have electricity, so it was a very, very dark place in the evenings. Sometimes they will hear El Silbón, and my grandfather will be enraged and he will go out of the house to the street with a bottle of rum and a belt, and he will pour rum around and he will lash the walls and the floor to scare El Silbón, because according to the legend, he's afraid of rum. He also doesn't like whips, so that's why my grandfather will take off his belt and hit the walls. He also is afraid of dogs, so if a dog barks, he's going to vanish. So that's my first experience with this story. Whether if it's true or not, I don't know. But that's why my grandmother says that this happened when she was a child, and it happened multiple times. So the second story is something that I personally experienced, and it's always very cool to remember this because you never expect to experience something like that. So this happened when I was 12 years old and I was visiting my great-grandmother with my siblings and my cousins. So all my family got together. So as children, we used to go to bed very late because most people in my family suffers from insomnia, and it makes no sense for our mothers to make us go to bed early if we are going to wake up early and then we're not going to let them sleep. During school vacations or during summer, we were allowed to stay awake, sometimes even past 12. So this particular night, all the adults were in the living room and all the children were in my great-grandmother's bedroom. Now, my great-grandmother's bedroom was connected to other bedroom where my cousin used to sleep. So there were three of my aunts. There was my mother, there were my two grandmas, my grandma and my great-grandmother. And in my great-grandmother's bedroom, there were my brother, my sister, and my cousins. It was a lot of people in this house. So my sister and my cousin were in my cousin's bedroom. They were playing with dolls and they were jumping and, you know, just doing children's stuff. Now my brother and my two cousins were watching The Children of the Corn, and I was in the bed across the room with my aunt, and my aunt was braiding my hair. So everyone is doing its stuff, everyone is very distracted, and all of a sudden my sister and my cousin run to me. And my sister is very pale and she's breathing hard. Now, she's 4 years younger than me. So, of course, to me, she was like a little child telling lies. She says that they heard a noise, that they heard a whistle, and they were scared. And I was very mean because I thought she was lying to me. And I was like, no, you didn't hear anything. Go back to the room and just keep playing. And I should have seen the red flag when she turned around and did exactly as I said, because she would never obey me. I guess now that she was so scared that she went back to the room because she didn't know what else to do. So she goes back and I noticed that they were still trying to play, but they were like aware. They're not that excited anymore. They're kind of whispering to each other and like trying to hear. But I didn't pay attention. I was trying to watch the movie as well. Again, they come back and they say, we heard a noise, we heard a noise. It's a whistle, it's a whistle. Now, I didn't make the connection with El Silbón. And it is because in my country, when you hear a whistle in the night, usually people associate it with a ghost or a spirit. So I thought that she was saying that they heard a whistle because a spirit was haunting them or something like that. So I thought that was the story they were trying to create to scare us. I said, stop lying, this is nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And then I noticed that my cousin was jumping on the bed and he stops jumping and he goes like, do you hear that? Then my brother and my other cousin look at him and they go quiet. And then they say, yes, we hear it, we hear it. And I was like, I cannot hear anything. I couldn't hear anything. They all run to the living room because they are all scared at this point. And I still cannot hear anything. I tried to explain to my mother and to my grandmother that they were, you know, just trying to scare themselves, that it's very late. And I was the type of child who is the party pooper. I didn't know how to have fun. I was sometimes very grumpy and I wanted to act like an adult. But then my grandmother tells us to shut up, and we all went quiet and tried to listen, and there it was. It was the whistle of El Silbón. I just looked at my mother and my grandmother like in shock because everyone knows how it sounds. And that was not the whistle of a ghost, it was the whistle of El Silbón. Then we were all like in shock because we were not expecting to hear that. We don't necessarily feel that the sound is increasing or decreasing. We just felt that it was moving, that it was circling the house. Of course, outside of the house. El Silbón can never come into your house. It's not going to haunt you inside of your house. It's always outside. So we hear the sound circling the house. And then when he reached the area where the backyard was located, we heard the dogs going insane, like barking with fury at this thing. And you could also hear the dogs chasing the sound. They will move like around the backyard until we couldn't hear the sound anymore. So yeah, that's my story. Till this day, we don't know what happened. The only explanation that comes to my mind is that perhaps someone was trying to prank us. But again, it was very late. This was a very isolated town. It was not an era of cell phones. I think this was in 2004. And also the sound was very smooth. It was very otherworldly. That's the only way I can describe it. So that was the legend of El Silbón. Let me know if you like this story, if you believe in the supernatural or not. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!